Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of the TV series Power and taking a closer look at one of its most compelling characters, Tommy Egan. As Ghost's best friend and right-hand man in the drug trade, Tommy is a complex character whose actions, motivations, and relationships have captivated viewers across the globe. In this video, we'll dissect Tommy's character from a psychological perspective, exploring his impulsive nature, flexible sense of morality, defensive aggression, rough upbringing, and intense relationships. So, let's buckle up and delve into the mind of Tommy Egan. Don't forget to like and subscribe. First and foremost, we have to talk about Tommy's ego. Tommy Egan has what we call an ID-dominated personality. The ID, as defined by Freudian psychoanalytic theory, is the primitive, instinctual component of personality that operates according to the pleasure principle, which demands immediate gratification of needs without consideration for the reality of the situation or potential consequences. It is the reservoir of the libido and drives us to seek immediate pleasure or avoid pain, acting impulsively and without judgment of these actions. Tommy Egan's character often displays actions dominated by the ID. His impulsive, sometimes reckless decisions and his instant reactions to threats demonstrate the primacy of the ID in his psychological makeup. For instance, he repeatedly engages in high-risk activities like drug dealing and violence, seeking power and satisfying his desires immediately without thoroughly thinking through potential long-term consequences. These actions suggest an ID-dominated personality. Tommy acts based on his desires and wants, showing little restraint even when it could put him or others in danger. Another example of his ID-dominated personality can be seen in his relationship with drugs. Tommy uses drugs as a means of immediate gratification, despite the apparent risks and dangers associated with their use. This further illustrates how his actions are motivated by instant gratification, a key characteristic of an ID-dominated personality. Moreover, his tendency to react to threats with violence, often immediately and without consideration for the potential consequences, again suggests a dominant ID. The ID is not concerned with the repercussions of actions or moral considerations. It merely seeks to satisfy its desires. Tommy's quick resort to violence when threatened suggests a response pattern driven by his primal urges for safety and dominance, characteristic of the ID. In conclusion, Tommy Egan's actions and decisions are frequently driven by his primal urges and the desire for immediate satisfaction, which points towards an ID-dominated personality in Freudian psychoanalytic theory. However, this does not mean that he is not influenced by his ego or superego at times, but the ID appears to be the most dominant force within his personality structure. After looking at how Tommy often acts on impulse because of his ID-dominated personality, it's interesting to see that his sense of morality, or his superego, doesn't seem to hold a lot of sway. In simple terms, the superego is like the moral compass in our minds. It's the part of us that's learned what's right and wrong from our parents, teachers, and society in general. The superego tries to keep the ID in check and pushes us to act in socially acceptable ways. For most people, their superego would stop them from doing things like breaking the law or hurting others. But for Tommy, his superego seems to be on the quieter side. He's involved in illegal activities like drug trafficking and doesn't hesitate to use violence. This could mean that his superego, or his sense of morality and social rules, isn't as strong or influential as it is in some people. It's also worth noting that Tommy does show loyalty and care towards his friends and loved ones. This suggests that his superego isn't completely missing, but it operates within a different framework of what's acceptable and what's not. So, while Tommy's actions are often driven by his immediate desires, his ID, his superego, or his internal rules about what's right and wrong doesn't seem to put many brakes on those actions. This combination helps create a character that's unpredictable, intense, and not afraid to break the rules. Continuing from how Tommy's sense of right and wrong, his superego, doesn't do much to tame his impulsive nature, his ID, we can also see that Tommy often uses aggression to cope with his problems. In simple terms, aggression is when someone uses force or hostile behavior to handle a situation. And defense mechanisms are strategies our minds use to deal with stress or uncomfortable feelings. In Tommy's case, aggression seems to be his go-to defense mechanism. Whenever Tommy feels threatened, upset, or angry, he often reacts by lashing out or resorting to violence. For instance, when he's dealing with a rival gang member or when things don't go his way in business, his immediate response is to use aggression. This is a type of defense mechanism called displacement, where a person redirects their feelings towards something or someone else. The thing about Tommy is that he doesn't take much time to sit with his feelings or process them. Instead, he reacts quickly, and those reactions are often aggressive. This pattern suggests that aggression is his way of managing stress, threats, or anything else that brings up strong emotions. So, in simple terms, when things get tough, Tommy's first instinct is to respond aggressively. This seems to be his main way of defending himself emotionally and physically. He might not take a moment to think through his actions. That's his ID talking. And his sense of right and wrong, his superego, doesn't seem to stop him. This makes his aggression a key part of his personality and how he navigates the world. So, we've talked about Tommy's impulsive behavior, his somewhat flexible moral compass, and his tendency to respond aggressively when faced with stress or threats. Now, if we take a step back and look at his past, a lot of these traits start to make sense. Specifically, Tommy's rough childhood had a big impact on him. Tommy was raised by his mother, Kate Egan, who was a drug addict. She wasn't able to provide a stable or nurturing environment for Tommy, which was rough for him. For instance, in one episode, Tommy recalls a memory from his childhood when he found his mother passed out from an overdose, a harrowing experience for any child. And as we see throughout the show, his relationship with his mother remained strained and complicated even into his adult years. For example, there are several times when Tommy is clearly frustrated with Kate, like when he finds out she had been keeping information from him about his father, and yet he continues to take care of her and tries to protect her, which shows how deep their bond goes, even if it's also filled with tension and problems. This troubled relationship with his mother has had a big influence on how Tommy handles his relationships and emotions. He's got a hard time trusting people, he's quick to act out in anger, and he often seeks validation through power and control. All these traits can be traced back to the instability and neglect he experienced growing up. So, while Tommy's a tough guy who can handle himself on the streets, he's also got this layer of trauma from his past that affects his actions and decisions. Alright, so we've looked at Tommy's impulsiveness, his somewhat flexible sense of right and wrong, his tendency to use aggression as a defense mechanism, and how his tough childhood impacts his actions. Now let's shift gears and talk about his relationships with other people, using examples from the show to illustrate. Tommy's relationships are a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, he's fiercely loyal to his close friends and loved ones, but on the other hand, he often uses manipulation and control in his relationships, which can lead to a lot of problems. One of the most important relationships in Tommy's life is his friendship with Ghost, his best friend and business partner. They've been through a lot together, from growing up in the same rough neighborhood to building a successful drug empire. But their relationship isn't always smooth. For instance, Tommy has felt betrayed by Ghost on several occasions, like when Ghost wanted to leave the drug business behind. Despite these tensions, Tommy remains deeply loyal to Ghost, which shows how much he values their bond. Then there's his relationship with Holly, his love interest. With Holly, we see a softer side of Tommy. He genuinely cares for her and even plans to propose, but he also struggles with vulnerability and communication in their relationship.
Where you going?
For example,
you really wanna know?
when Holly tries to persuade Tommy to cut ties with Ghost, Tommy feels torn between his loyalty to Ghost and his love for Holly, leading to a lot of tension and eventually tragedy. In a nutshell, Tommy's relationships are intense and complicated, much like his personality. He's fiercely loyal, but also controlling and sometimes manipulative. He loves deeply, but also struggles with vulnerability. These complexities in his relationships mirror the complexities within himself, shaped by his past and his approach to life. Alright folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the character of Tommy Egan from Power. As we've discussed, Tommy's actions and personality traits are influenced by a range of psychological aspects, from his dominant ID and a seemingly underdeveloped superego to his aggressive defense mechanisms, traumatic childhood, and complex relationships. Despite his often violent ways, Tommy's fierce loyalty and ability to love show us there's much more to him than first meets the eye. His character stands as a reminder of how our past experiences and psychological makeup can shape our actions, relationships, and who we become. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the mind of Tommy Egan. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more content like this.
You don't come from good
Leave
parents.
a comment below with your thoughts on Tommy's character or any other characters you'd like us to explore next. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.